Hello, ModPo people. This is Al. We're here at the Kelly Writers House at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, PA, USA. And we have people all over the world watching this first ModPo 2017 live interactive webcast. And we have some great people here at the table. We have Molly O'Neill, who came from Los Angeles to join us. Hey, Moll.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Isn't that great that Molly's back? What do you think? Some snaps for Molly's?
Yay.
Yeah, this is so great. And we have Lily Applebaum at the
Hello.
table. Hey, Lil. And we have Amber Rose Johnson, who's joining us as a TA for the first time this year. Hey, Amber Rose.
Hey, friends.
Hey, it's really good to have you with us. And, of course, Davey is here. Davey Niddle. Hello, Davey.
Hi, Al.
Yeah, that's all I get?
I'm saving it for later.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, that's very, I don't know what. Gabe Ojeda Segay is here. Julia, there's a chair for you up here. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, let's get Julia the portable mic for a moment. And here's Julia Block, one of the co-founders of ModPo in 2012, and she was with us for the first several seasons, and we're so happy to have her here for a few minutes. Yeah,
Hello.
I'm sure the chatter is going to explode when they see you. So that's
I can't stay
wonderful.
because I'm really behind on getting ready to teach Whitman at 2 o'clock
You're teaching
in
Whitman?
my live class.
Oh, you should have the class come join us, but
I
we
should
won't
have
be.
the class
We
come
won't be
join
still.
us. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll stay for a little bit.
All right, and we have Anna Strong Safford here, who is answering the phone. We'll tell you more about the phone in a minute. We have Zach Gardner, who is handling 5 things at once technically. And by the way, if you are a ModPo repeater, a ModPo lifer, a ModPo veteran, whatever, you may notice the quality of the video has just increased because Zach and Chris have gotten some new toys, namely this amazing camera. Can we get a picture of the camera? I don't think we can do that. That's too meta. There it is. No, turn it a little more. He doesn't want to show himself. That's the problem. There it is. This amazing thing. And Chris Martin, who's handling pretty much everything, including audio. And we have Eric, who's a long-time 2012 co-founder, participant, and CTA, and maker of his own marvelous MOOC Plus. He's got all kinds of things going on. We have Laura, who comes to us from Bucks County, and we have Nicole, who's in the back. And we also have Amaris, who is there from afar. Hello, Amaris.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Al.
Hey, it's great to see you. And Joe Massey.
Great to see you, too.
Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. Wow, and you're out on your deck, as usual.
Yes.
And some birds are chirping.
It's very
This
nice.
is
I thought it was
great.
appropriate for Whitman, so.
Yeah, perfect. And Joe Massey has joined us from Western Massachusetts, the Pioneer Valley. Hi, Joe.
That's right. Hi, Al.
And
Hi, everyone.
Joe is not, he's like triple threat because he has been a friend of ModPo for several years. He is a ModPo Plus poet. He's someone we encounter in the course as a poet. And he is also now, for the first time, a ModPo TA. And we're so thrilled. And Joe will be joining us live here next week. So we're
That's
looking
right.
forward
Looking
to it.
forward to it.
And we have Erica Kaufman, I see. And Erica comes to us from the Hudson Valley, from Bard, where she is the, let's just say, one of the people in charge, shall we say that in a flux moment, of the Bard Institute of Writing and Thinking, I believe. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Erica. And Erica is also currently our curator and lead person in our Center for Pedagogy, which we call the Teacher Resource Center, TRC, and I'm sure there'll be a chance for us to plug it. And I haven't missed anybody. So just a couple of shout-outs, and then we can get going on our discussion about Whitman and Dickinson. Jake Marmer and his students. Jake is also a TA in the course. He's a poet and a teacher. He's going to be here next week, actually. And he and his students in the Kahila High School at in Palo Alto are joining us. Hello, guys. And Davey's dad, Charles Niddle, is joining us from New York, from Brooklyn, I think. Is there any way we could get Charlie, I guess we could call him? Maybe not. Chuck? Maybe not.
You'd get in trouble with his dead mother.
Yeah. His
Yeah.
dead mother is going to get... I've had worse
you're
threats
gonna get
than that.
super ghosts out.
Hey, Chuck, come on down. Hey, Charlie, come on down. Charles Niddle,
Yeah, you can get him to
welcome. This is the first and last webcast that he's going to look at, no doubt. Jeremy Dixon of Hazard Press, who's our dear friend from Cardiff, Wales, one of our fans and friends, and a fine poet, who said, to quote the Pointer Sisters, "I'm so excited about the webcast." And Anthony Watkins, Arif Dalvi, who's a neurosurgeon, and Robin Cohn and the whole Palm Beach County gang, whom I've met several times, have been such great supporters. There isn't any power, but they found a way to connect. I guess they're charging in their cars. And so our thoughts are with you. I guess that's the cliche, but really real thoughts. We're worried about you guys, and we hope you're okay. One last thing in the way of announcements. There's a New York City meetup on September 23rd at noon at the New York Public Library, 53rd Street branch, and Mandana Chaffa, who's one of our CTAs and dear friends, is going to be convening it. And we urge you all to go and find the study groups and meetups forum, which is easy to find in the main forums page. And you're going to find, just going to list some. I hope you'll go and find your people so you can do meetups. Mary Armour is now voluntarily coordinating meetups around the African continent. She herself is near Cape Town, but she is voluntarily coordinating groups in North Africa and East Africa in particular. So check that out. Joe Massey himself in Western Massachusetts is looking for some pals to go meet up at a coffee shop. The South San Francisco Mid-Peninsula, I say Silicon Valley, they haven't used that phrase, for reasons that may be obvious. They want to hang out, so look for them. The Chicago group, which includes Max and Nick and some other great people, I've hung out with them. The Sydney group and the Melbourne group are organizing. Anna in Qatar is reaching out to anybody else in Qatar. We're going to try to figure out if there's some other people there. Diane Schofield and others in Scotland. Hadir in New Delhi has organized a group. There's a study group for veterans that Greg Gallagher is organizing. Greg is in D.C., he's a dear friend. The D.C. group, Anthony and Ray and the gang will be meeting every weekend at a bookstore there. Holly York, who's a CTA who used to be teaching French at Emory, I believe. She's retired and is now in Paris. Tough work. So she and Irene and Juan Pablo, who used to be in South America, they're all in Paris. Join them. There's a group for teens. Mandana's New York group. Julie Naslin has moved to the Oregon High Desert. Anybody? That would be cool. I think. What do you think, Mal? Can we go meet up there in the high desert and do a?
Yes, I'm in.
That would be really cool. Alexander is in Moscow looking for other Muscovites. Mashir in Bangladesh has organized a group. Melania Scotti, who's studying English in Buenos Aires, is looking for a group. The London group is organizing, and we will be there ourselves. The ModPo team will be there in early October. And I'm helping Nargis in Tehran figure out if she can get a group together. And so if there are any Iranians or Persian-speaking Iranian Americans, let's get a group together. Okay, so that's announcements. This is a global thing. We hope everybody will find a way to meet up. But this is second best. So why don't we get into it? We have a phone call. Oh my goodness, already? No, we don't. Okay, so let me tell you how we can interact, and then we can get started. So there's a sub-forum inside the ModPo site. So all you have to do is go to discussion forums, click on that, and find the live webcasts main forum, and go to the 9/13/17 live webcast thread, and you can post to that. And some of us are following that here. And I'm refreshing to see if anybody's there. We also have a bunch of people who are committed to Twitter. So you tweet by using the hashtag ModPoLive, or ModOlive, ModPoLive, Twitter. So if you use that hashtag, I think Davey, among others, will watch that. Is anything happening there?
Folks are very excited that this webcast is
Oh,
happening.
good.
Many of them say hi to you, Al.
How about Charles Niddle? Is Charles Niddle hashtagging ModPoLive? We're doing too much teasing of Charles.
Yeah, my dad has an age-appropriate relationship to Twitter. Let's put it that way.
Whoa. Okay, Facebook. The Facebook group, and if you're not a member, just search on Facebook ModPo, and you'll get there. The Facebook group, which has about 10,000 people who are members. The stream is actually right there, and the comment feed, is that what we call it in Facebook, is already happening. Who's looking at that? I guess I am, huh? Okay, now I'm looking at that. Oh, there I am. That's freaky. And most of all, 215-573-9752, 215-573-9752. If you call, we can pipe you in somehow through the Chris magic, and you can talk to us, 215-573-9775.
Keep an eye on the Facebook?
That would be really cool. You have a way of doing that? Yeah. That's great. Okay, good. So from the social media platforms, what do we got? Davey, what do we got on Twitter?
Twitter's just pure enthusiasm right now.
Okay.
No questions yet.
Okay, good. And so in the discussion forums,
There's one question that I actually took a shot at answering in the forums, but
Good.
just a sort of general question about the class itself. Somebody talking about, her name is Freya Creech, is talking about how her experience so far, and she seems new to poetry and reading poetry in this way, her experience so far is when she reads a poem that she has trouble coming up with sort of any concrete ideas about what the poem might be or might be doing, but that she reads it a bunch of times and she enjoys reading it and she's having fun. And she's sort of wondering how she gets to the interpretations and meanings that we in the videos pull together. And so
Great.
my shot at answering this
Yeah.
was sort of that I told her, don't feel ashamed about this because when the TAs make those videos, like those interpretations come through a conversation between us all. So there's already a collaborative aspect to the videos themselves. So it's not that we all in a vacuum made our interpretations, came and then presented them one by one. So I said something like, not being able to come up with something on your own, or maybe feeling like you're struggling to
Yeah.
come up with a concrete analysis, is actually fine because we're going to do it together. That's sort of the point of having such a large
That's a great
class.
answer, Gabe. We hardly need to do any more, but I'll invite Molly and then Joe to just say another word about that. Molly, it's true, when we make those videos, we don't plan, and therefore, what happens?
Spontaneity happens. We're able to bounce ideas off of one another and ask questions, and then ask questions in return to each other's questions, and break things down, I think, into more manageable chunks, small pieces, and then sort of see how those pieces relate to one another.
Great response. Joe Massey, I mean, you and I have done, I think Anna was with us, I'm not sure. We've actually talked about your own poems, which is probably nervous-making a little bit, because you probably prefer to write poems than to sit around and break them apart. But what was your experience in that conversation? I mean, what happens when you improvisationally interpret?
Well, Al, you put me at ease as usual.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, it was difficult. I found myself thinking about my own work in ways I'd never thought about it before, and so close reading in that way kind of reopened the poem for me, kind of renewed it.
Yeah.
But in direct response to that question, my response would be: don't stress out about it. If you're enjoying the language,
Yeah.
stay there for a while. Let
Yeah.
any other kind of reading happen organically.
Yeah. Can we get the portable mic to Julia? Julia, you've thought a lot about teaching poetry, and I'd like you to say something about the kind of poetry that is more rather than less open to this kind of improvisational interpretive community approach which we take. What is it about the poetry that we prefer? That's the sweetest, kindest word.
Yeah.
Right, because there is always a canon being built. But what is it about the kind of poetry we prefer that makes this kind of quasi-democracy of interpretation possible?
Well, the most obvious answer to that question is we like to read poetry that has multiple meanings, but that's maybe a little too obvious. I think it's more that we like, or we tend to look to poetry that's saying something bigger about language, and it's saying something bigger about what poetry is and what it can do in its doing. So the poem itself is kind of working it out on the page, and sometimes we might even say a poem is making an argument, but that doesn't necessarily mean that argument has a conclusion. It can actually go on, and we can return to it, and we can mix up the steps, and we can be nonlinear in our discussions. And I think you see that in a lot of the videos, a lot of doubling back, a lot of starting again with fresh eyes.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to invite Lily, Amaris, and then Erica to add to this. And the new question for me to the three of you is, there's something about the way we all were taught in a class that has 50 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes, or in a semester which ends in December or May, and therefore there needs to be some conclusions, there needs to be grades awarded to the closed-ended work that you did in your term paper, et cetera. we've been somewhat liberated in this format of being a community that goes year after year. So we all live with these poems. We all live with this dwell in possibility stuff. And so I guess and I'll start with Erica, who's like, professionally, your job is to think about how you transform the boundedness of traditional pedagogy and open it up, right, so that it's an ongoing conversation in the way that Julia means, so that's not just bullshit, sort of progressive pedagogical bullshit, but actually works. Can you say something about that whole topic, and then Amaris and Lily?
Yeah, it's something I think a lot about because many of the contexts that I work with teachers in, they are bound to these very short 50-minute periods. And it's really hard to, shift to a pedagogy like what you're describing, but it's also really possible. And I think it has a lot to do with thinking of the arc of a marking period or a semester as being an ongoing conversation where all of the poems are talking to each other, all of the texts are in conversation with one another. So that way you can kind of keep these lines of possibility and imagination continuously in flux.
Yeah. And why?
That makes sense.
It does make sense. And why is flux good? Flux is scary, right? There are a lot of ModPo people who come, especially in the first year, and they say, well, this Dickinson poem, it's a ballad, and it ends with gathering paradise, or the threat that every man be blind in the telling the slant truth. And I really much prefer that kind of boundedness because you're messing with my head. Why would you encourage someone to teach? I mean, the world is so open-ended. Maybe we could use some finitude once in a while.
Well, I think it's about critical thinking. And if you want to work with students so that they understand that their thoughts matter and that they learn how to really critically grapple with the text, you want something to be open to change and open to ongoing conversation.
Yeah, that's really well put. And this is right up Lily's alley because I've heard her recently say profound things on this topic of why we need critical thinking. Do you want to add something to it? I know it's a little obvious in the 6th year of ModPo, but a lot of people are just watching for the first time.
Yeah, I think I feel like the goal with critical thinking is making the process of reading poetry feel less like the traditional classroom situation where someone, whether it's the teacher or the poet themselves, holds all the information and you are just there to absorb the information.
Yeah.
But if we focus on thinking and like Erica said, that the thoughts and what you are thinking and you bring to the table is valuable and important, that's a way to just unlock, quote unquote, some of the phrases within the poem or the meaning of the poem, and then also be able to then carry it around with you as kind of shaping your ever growing process of critical thinking, as opposed to just okay, I don't have the information, I read the poem, someone gave me the information, and then I'm done with it, and that's it.
So it's an ongoing, interactive, interanimated situation. And in week 3 of ModPo, somewhat famously for those who've been through the course, we begin to talk about intersubjectivity, where poems that we really end up admiring make us do the work and encounter it dynamically so that we meet it halfway. And then poems that we have less excitement about. For instance, there's a little poem by Ezra Pound called The Encounter, in which the encounter looks like it's kind of a one-way thing. So it pretends to be intersubjective, but winds up being Pound looking at someone, the woman in the poem. Amaris, you want to add something to this? And then we're going to survey the social media responses and questions.
Yeah, I guess just to add to what everyone was saying, in traditional pedagogy, the role of the student is to kind of be passive and accept what the teacher says to be the ultimate authority, the singular truth. And in ModPo, what the poems we're concerned with, we kind of encourage critical thinking, but also creativity. So the idea that your experiences and context kind of will affect your interpretation of the poem. And that's why you can come back to it multiple times, because maybe 3 years later, your circumstances have changed, your insights have changed, and that is
Whoa.
still valid in poems that we like to explore in this course.
Whoa, I'm so glad you added that third thing, a third dimension, which is to say we all grow. I'm not sure what that word means, but we all progress through life. There's a time thing, right? So you think of a poem as being received when you were 19 in the sophomore survey requirement, the British Lit Norton thing, right, Gabe? And then you become older and you have a different set of experiences, or you suffer certain traumas and losses, or you find someone you love and you can't imagine having been in the world without that person. And then suddenly you go back and you read a novel which is about, I don't know, finding someone you love, and you realize you missed it the last time. And if the poem is interanimated, then you wind up actually having that third dimension experience that the poem has grown, even though it's the same words on the page. Right, okay. So do we have someone on the phone, Anna?
We're seem to be having some problems with
Okay.
the YouTube
All
and
right,
the
great.
Facebook live feeds. Some folks are calling in just wondering other ways to get in.
Oh,
Yeah.
so does that mean that some people are not able to watch the thing?
It does appear that way.
Okay, so what I would say is go to the ModPo site and click on resources and go to the live webcast sessions link. And there you will have a link to our live webcast page. And I'll even read out the URL for that. It is writing.upenn.edu/wh/multimedia/webcasts. And that will give you a direct link to the player if you're dependent on Facebook. Chris and Zach, are you going to try to think this through, or do you know that there's something wrong? We don't see any issues. Okay. All right, great. Okay, so let's hear what's happening out there in Twitter and Facebook. Amber Rose, what do we got in Facebook?
Yeah, so Jake Marmer.
Jake Marmer, who's the Palo Alto teacher TA guy.
Nice. Okay, so we have some questions from his class.
Okay.
So the first question is, does Whitman's Song of Myself need to have a subject? Is there a subject? Does it
Meaning
need to have
subject
a
matter?
subject? Subject matter, I believe.
Yeah.
Or you can specify, Jake, but I believe that he's saying subject matter.
Right. Wow. Can we
So
just
that's the first
Can
question,
we
then
just
there's another question.
hear the other questions and then pick the one we want to answer?
Sure. So the other question from his class is about the usage of apostrophe in some of Whitman's verbs in past tense. So some of them there's an apostrophe like buzzed has an apostrophe versus others that don't, such as undistinguished.
All right.
So about that use of
That's
apostrophe.
good. Is there another one?
Nope.
Okay, let's deal with the first question. All right, and let's get the mic over to Eric for a possible response to this question. Do we have a portable mic? Yes, Anna has it. Laura, would you grab it? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so Amber Rose, Davey,
Yeah.
how about it? Is there a subject matter? Does Whitman have one? And does a poem of the sort that we really like need to have a subject matter? You want to take a stab at that?
I don't know that I would say that it has a subject. I think that the point of the poem is the kind of wandering nature of it. Mm-hmm. To the question of a subject as in an individual person, he takes on a lot of different personas, and he's trying to paint a picture of New York through the eyes of several subjects.
Right.
And I think that it's that wandering and that exploration and the movement through subjectivities. I think that is the point of the poem.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's perfect. Davey, how can you follow that?
I would follow it by adding to it, Al.
Okay.
Participating in the, doing the thing.
Yeah.
Supplemental,
auxiliary,
auxiliary,
additive,
yes.
alliances.
Those things.
All the positives.
Yeah. I also consider this to be a poem that's really thinking about scale and thinking about the scale of the self, the scale of the human, the scale of the collectivity, the relationship between a lot of people moving through space and each of those people feeling both tiny and enormous within their own understanding of themselves. And I think that shift in scale isn't a subject, but is, to borrow the Creeley word, the locus of the poem.
To borrow the what word?
The Creeley word, the locus.
Creeley, Robert
yeah, the
Creeley.
Robert Creeley word,
Yes.
the locus of the poem. so that it's like,
I thought it was a creamy word, and I thought,
yeah. I end up on Webcast, I'm always
here's a
talking
creamy
too
word
fast.
for Walt. Self.
That's true.
Self.
And so I think that the movement that Amber Rose is thinking about is both like a lot of stuff moving through space. Folks in the forums this week were thinking a lot about the Blab of the Pave section,
Yes.
but also thinking about a movement that's operating between and among different scales, and just that
Right.
the difficulty of thinking about how to locate yourself within a buzzy, occupied collectivity of lots and lots of people.
Well, that's really great. Okay, and I would think that Jake's class, these are high school students, I would think that they'd be the perfect people to ask this question. Can the subject matter of what you write be what the self perceives, what the self takes in, what the self reckons? I realize that's a modern approach in the late 19th century, but it's still pretty relevant to the whole adolescent and post-adolescent experience, which is to say, instead of being chastised by all the adults in your world, like, you're too narcissistic, everything's about you. Yeah, Walt says, everything's about me. That's the way it is. Like, what the fuck is wrong with that? You know, like, okay. Eric, do you want to add something to this? You've thought a lot about this.
Yeah, so there is absolutely a subject to Song of Myself. The difficulty for us in recognizing it is that this is 2017, and Walt Whitman helped to build the kind of selves that we have now. He helped to build the idea of American democracy. He helped to build the kinds of ideas of freedom that we have as part of our construct. Now, we can work against Walt, we can work with him, but it's already established in us.
Yes, nice.
So we have to go back to realize how shocking these words would be.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
In the 1850s.
And how, in a sense, undemocratic, sorry, this is a modernist speaking, but how undemocratic the most pre-modern writing would have been, which is to say, what's your subject matter? Did you handle it in the right poetic form? And Walt's saying, I'm not interested in that question. And he, in a sense, built the democratic air of the aesthetics of the later period. That's fantastic. Anna, who do we have on the phone?
So we have a brand new ModPoer calling from Ontario, Canada. Her name's Cindy McMullen. She's a poet, and she has a really amazing question about the splinter.
Okay.
Question/comment about the splinter in Brain Within Its Groove.
Fantastic. Can you put her into the room?
Second.
All right, let's do the magic. Cindy?
Hi, Al.
Hi.
Hi, loving ModPo.
Oh, my goodness. I see you in Facebook, and I see you in the forums, and you're such an enthusiast already. It feels like you've been in the course for 6 years.
Well, I've been studying poetry at home for several years, so a home scholar.
Yeah,
But,
there's a lot of home scholars in ModPo, and we love them. We don't know you well enough to say we love you, but I'm sure we'll get there, and I'm just really pleased by what you've done so far in the course. Thank you for that.
I love the fact that this is so open and the opportunity. I don't mean to get misty-eyed, but it's amazing that you've provided that you and the TAs are there sharing all that information and being so open with it. It is fantastic.
I before you get to your question, I would like to ask randomly somebody, one of the people here, why we do that. I mean, why would we there's probably a cynical answer to that question, but Joe Massey, why would you have better things to do. You could be writing your poems. Why are you interested in sharing in this open format, this whole world of poetry with Cindy from Ontario? Well, you're muted, Joe. Unmute.
Okay.
No, Cindy, you're good. Joe's going to talk.
Anna told me to mute my mic. I was making noise.
Yeah.
As a poet, the fact that there's so many people, thousands of people, so enthusiastic about poetry really helps me feel so much less hopeless in my, garret here in Massachusetts writing poems. Really often feels like I'm just writing into the void. So it's the communal aspect of ModPo is an inspiration.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Joe, and I think we all share that feeling. Okay, Cindy, fire away. What's your question about the splinter?
Okay, well, as a writer, as a poet, I take this reading very differently. I still take it as a meta poem, but I don't take it as a meta poem about the actual poem itself, but at the process of writing poetry. All the small annoyances, the splinters of the everyday that can throw you off track, that can get you out of your natural rhythm, your groove. You're going, you're writing, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door. There's a sweet visitor. You realize there's something that you have to do.
Wow.
And you can't get back. Sometimes you lose that natural flow of thought, and you want it to return, but it's gone.
Yeah.
You had that perfect moment, and it disappears.
Wow.
When we look at the word turnpike, for example, the historical relevance to that is it's a toll gate. It was a toll gate that was put on free roads that were accessible, that were traveled often.
Yes.
And when you look at that, and you look at the fact that she frequently wrote about hills and mills in a positive, way, I can't see her wanting that all raised. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Abolished. I see that as being I read it opposite to what you read it.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think you do, actually.
Oh.
I think you're, and we're going to find that out when we invite people to talk about this, but I think you're remarkably, in the end, aligning. And I'll give the punchline away, but then I want my colleagues to talk about this. That turnpike, it's not simply, I'm in favor of the way New England has set up its industrial situation because I like to include that stuff in my poems because I like the materiality of life in New England. I really look at these things and it's an inspiration and it gives me the material. But at the same time, this is a turnpike that got scooped for itself. It's a kind of radical liberation from the commodification and the industrialization of the traditional New England life. So I think there's two sides of it. All right, but I want to go back to this question of the splinter swerving and the writing and the process, and this is a risk because it could take too long, but I want everybody at the table and in the, what do we call these people here? In the Hangouts, thank you. I'm a little rusty. I want everybody to say one brief, super brief thing about the power of this splinter, and to respond to Cindy's feeling that the splinter is, well, I don't want to attribute a positive or negative to her interpretation, but the splinter is important, and it is about the actual way that you write, and whether it's negative or positive is an open question. So, and Dave Poplar has joined us. Hey, Dave.
Howdy. How's it going?
Hey, good. You just blew Amaris's ears out. Be a little softer there. You're in Arizona?
Tucson, yes.
Wow, we just can't keep up with you. It's good to see you. So I bought some time. I want everybody around the table, starting with Gabe, ending with Mal, and then Amaris, Dave, Joe, and Erica to respond very briefly to Cindy. This is a lot of people, so brief, just one thing about what Cindy said. All right, Cindy, stay on the line because we're going to give you the last word.
I personally have always felt that the splinter can be a positive or a negative. I think that it's true that a splinter is something being taken away from the center, which means that it can be that you are becoming unproductive, as in you're taken away from the thing you want to be in, the groove you want to be in. This is a poem that I think often deals with mental health. But also, we need to understand that a splinter itself is a sort of radiant thing in the sense that it is sticking out and is isolated somewhat in a positive way. It's gotten out of its trunk or whatever we're talking about. So my brief thing is that I'm ambivalent, or I'm both. Yeah. I think it's kind of both.
Okay, you said one thing is that the splinter is difference.
Yes.
The splinter is a certain resistance to the easy flow. Yeah. And unproductivity is actually very productive for Emily Dickinson. Here she is in New England in the 19th century, the seat of productivity, saying, yeah, unproductivity. Ooh, that's productive in my own radical way. All right, sorry. Davey, quickly.
I want to quickly draw attention to the letting that happens, the doubleness of let a splinter swerve, that it's both like, should a splinter swerve in like a like proof and geometry of like, should this happen?
Yes,
Right.
let, like, presume, assume, stipulate.
But then also a question of let yourself think differently, let yourself be distracted, let yourself be taken away. Permit yourself to have the splinter swerve and see what happens, where in that permission, you might not understand whether or not something useful is happening to you, in the sense that like it's the call, it's the knock on the door that takes you away from your poem, but it's the exchange that you happen while you're at the door that builds the framework for what the poem becomes.
That's really good. That's fantastic. Amber Rose, your thought on this?
Yeah, I had a thought actually similar to Davey, but I was thinking about our kind of opening comments and you saying, you know, you have to experience some things and then you go back and a poem can feel different. A poem can grow, whatever that means. And I guess I was thinking about not just what the encounter is, but even if there is some negative, let's say that the splinter hurts you or gives you some kind of infection, just thinking about the growth that can come out of that and recognizing the usefulness of that.
Yeah, fantastic. Lily?
I feel like maybe what Cindy was talking about was reading a darkness or like a negativity or like a terror, like a nature terror in the scene in The Last End. Like, I think we sort of tend to read that as like an anti-productivity that is good, but it's also extremely destructive and like there's an awesome scary power in it.
Right.
And I think
trotting out of the mills.
Yeah, like I think that's a common thing in Emily Dickinson's poetry, like talking about like oceans and like being unmoored at sea and things like that. Like I think now like we would read someone talking about a nature metaphor and not think about how invested they might be in the terror of that, like as a real threat to their real everyday life. Maybe now with the unfortunate like hurricanes and everything.
Well, when we first did the recording about that, we talked about Katrina, right? And we talked about the power of trotting out the mills. Right? And now I think we have a whole lot of more Dickinsonian, we have a reason to defer to the greater powers that are greater than the consumerist manufacturing economy, which thinks it's the cat's meow.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is that, like, I think she's not necessarily saying, like, that it's not a one-to-one of, like, creative unproductivity is good and so is like flooding the entire region and causing a ton of destruction. Like it's not those things aren't correlated. It's more like trying to control everything in nature, like trying to control your brain is a very temporary stay that ultimately leads to more destruction than if you had come up with like a more natural system to approach things.
It would be interesting thought exercise would be to think of Emily Dickinson as a 1930s communist poet wanting the whole thing to be wiped away, or a mid-60s poet, a radical poet hoping for a certain utopian wipeout. She's not that, and I think Cindy's recognizing a certain appreciation she has for some structure, some superstructure of human life in there, but wanting it also to get broken up by the greater powers. But anyway, Molly, a quick thought on this?
Yeah, in the first two lines, I think she's describing flow state. And that's kind of all there is to say about that. And then the rest of the poem is about what happens when the splinter comes. So like, no splinter, no poem. No mud, no lotus, right?
Yeah, no splinter, no poem. No splinter, no Dickinson poem, because it would be just it would be just kind of a truth poem. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So this is where Cindy, I said earlier to Cindy, and she'll have the final word on this, is that she both disagrees and agrees with us about the meta-poetic quality of this, because no splinter, no poem, and it really becomes a Dickinson poem, which he says, yeah, everything runs evenly and true, but if you give permission to something else, it's going to run amok. Okay, let's go to Amaris. A quick thought on this, Amaris?
Yeah, what really strikes me about the splinter, I guess, is the visceral sensation of it, the aspect of it, kind of like what was said before, of it being painful, something that's not lethal but nags at you and kind of destroys all your assumptions of what is.
Yeah.
And I think she's in favor of that. She's in favor of kind of that sensation that disrupts your life and causes you to rethink things.
Yeah, she's very adventurous, very venturesome in courting these kinds of disturbances. That's really good. Dave?
I didn't hear Cindy's comment, so I'm not sure what to respond
Oh,
to.
you can respond to anything that your colleagues have said. Or you can pass.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pass for now.
Okay. Joe Massey, thank you. Dave, Joe Massey, thoughts?
Yeah, I love what Molly said. No splinter, no poem. That's how I read it. It's neither positive nor negative. It's an opportunity to choose suppression or to unleash it. And it also reminded me of the poet Carl Rakosi when he stopped writing poetry for 30 years, 40 years. He said it made him physically ill. So there's also danger in suppressing it, and there's danger in unleashing it as well. It's sort of it's either way, you're screwed.
How often can you opt to have the top of your head blown off, right?
Exactly,
And still be intact. I mean,
Right.
it's a long argument about Dickinson, whether she was psychosocially intact or whether this was a strategy to allow herself to be extraordinary, to make it possible for her to be extraordinary in a world where suppression wasn't just a poetic thing, right?
Yeah.
It was a gendered discrimination. It was a certain New England style of remuneration and commercialization and industrialization that she didn't think was going to be productive in the mode that she preferred. Okay, Erica Kaufman, final thought on this? Last thought, and then we'll go back to Cindy.
I think of the splinter as chance or perhaps even possibility.
Yeah, I love chance because we're going to get to it. Anna, you have a thought on this? I'm sure you do.
Oh, sure. I was just thinking about that, again, going back to Molly's wonderful, like, no splinter, no poem. I was recently rereading My Emily Dickinson by Susan Howe, a poet and a poem.
A text that will reappear in the course in
later on,
week 8.
Yep, and get excited for it because it's a wild ride. But Susan Howe, when she was doing her archival research about Emily Dickinson, sort of went into these archives and was looking at sort of like the turnpike path through the Emily Dickinson scholarship as it existed at the time. And she's the person who splintered that archive wide open and said, the way that we've come to understand Emily Dickinson is perhaps there's other ways to understand her. And, Susan Howe's so responsible for the way that we've read Emily Dickinson in this course. So it's not just about the splinter in that poem itself. It's about the splinters that other poets, because of her, have allowed themselves to.
So it's not just meta-poetic, but it's meta-critical in the sense that it keeps going. Cindy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, so
I've loved hearing all these different views. It's fantastic.
So no Cindy, no discussion. Because you just, right? You're the splinter. You called from Ottawa. You're the splinter. We went off the deep end, and now we're better.
She was a very well-read woman. In her personal library were the lectures on the philosophy of the human mind by Thomas Brown.
An unreadable book, by the way.
But she understood, I think, a little bit about psychology, and I think I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
I did want to say, if anybody, she was quite playful, and I stare at this poem, and I see the word swerve, and right behind it is a straight dash.
Yes. Very playful at the level of the orthography and the calligraphy, and of course, one of the problems that we had when we encountered this together with a video camera in our faces was we may not have given enough play to the play. I can't remember at this point. It was so long ago. Cindy, thank you for calling. Thanks for being part of the...
receiving my call. It's been fabulous.
Yeah, and maybe a road trip is in order to come down to Philly at some point?
I don't think I can get there.
Okay, but join us for these
But I am very
Wednesdays.
interested. Thank
and
you.
Stay with us. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That's great. 215-573-9752. Let's go around, and if anybody's got something there's another call. In the social media world, you want to just throw one thing out without commenting, just pass it along. Davey, what do you got?
Megan Worrell-Lupton is
Megan from Asheville and Smokies.
is curious about the relationship for Molly between your yoga practice and your thinking about the way that the splinter gets embodied in Dickinson's poem.
Wow. Hey, Ma, could you think about that for a second, and then we'll come back to you? That's a great question. Gabe, what else we got there?
I have a question in the discussion forum that's kind of interesting. It's a general question that maybe can be summarized as who are Dickinson's and Whitman's readers in a general sense, and like what would be their figuring of their readers? Like what's their relationship to readership?
Wow.
And of course, this like interpolates us. Obviously,
sure does.
So there's a lot to be. So.
Yeah, okay, let's let that hang out there. Amber Rose, you see anything that you want to quote?
No other questions on Facebook just
Okay.
yet.
Ray Maxwell gently wags his finger at us just a little bit in response to my talking about the modern era. We focus on modernism because it was our era. But what if modernism in poetry and in all art is just a passing moment, a splinter itself? Thanks a lot, Ray. You trumped us there. That's not the wrong word. You hegemonized us there. That was very good. No, he did. He does that, right? Okay. So the person I want actually Molly to answer the question about yoga, and I think generally about it's probably about the bodiliness and the physicality of this self-referential poetry and all this other stuff, but maybe not.
That's not where I was going to go.
Okay,
with
go
that,
where you want to
actually.
go.
I was thinking just in terms of the splinter as sort of divine inspiration, and if the practice, whether it's a meditation practice or something more physical, is a routine, is a flow. Just like the brain within its groove. Sometimes we're moved to focus on one thing out of seemingly nowhere. And once we kind of devote our attention and investigate that thing, whatever it might be, like an idea or a posture or like an action, I think if we really explore more deeply, it can open up a whole new world for us.
Oh, that's really good. Thank you. That's great. Before we take this call, I want to say that the next caller, who will be our last caller for the webcast, will receive a copy of the complete poems of Emily Dickinson, which I will mail, or Lily actually will mail. Sorry, Lily's looking at me like, you and what army, Al? Who are you? You and your fleas? We, or to be specific, Lily will do the work of mailing the complete poems to the next caller, not this caller, but this caller we love anyway. Who is it?
Al, we have Barbara calling us from Ithaca, New York, and she has a follow-up question about the brain within its groove.
Okay, great. Hello, Barbara.
Hi.
Hi. Are you a first-time ModPo person?
Actually, I have been a full-time college professor in educational studies, and I've done the course probably 5 or 6 times.
Oh, my goodness.
I only have participated very, very modestly, and now I'm doing the course seriously for the first time because I've retired.
I just want to say, Barbara, yes, Anna is pumping fists. I just want to say that when we created this massive open online course back in 2012, we had no idea, right? And there are a bunch of people in this room who were there at the beginning, including Eric. We had no idea that we would have this ongoing relationship with people that, in your case, we weren't even aware of. And it's just, I'm getting the goosebumps because this is why I was hoping I had gotten into academia in the first place. There would be this sort of largeness of the interpretive community. So, yay, Barbara, yay, Ithaca.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's very exciting. So anyway, I started to teach a course at Colgate in response to ModPo, actually.
Really?
I was getting
my alma mater?
Well, I was in educational studies, but I was tiring of the theory of my field.
Yeah.
It's all progressive political theory, which I love, but I was beginning to believe that we would get further with the students using imaginative literature and poetry. So I started studying poetry seriously, and eventually, in my last year at Colgate, I taught a course called Poetics of Educational Philosophy.
Whoa.
And I started
Best
the
thing I've
course.
heard about Colgate in 3 decades, but
Oh, I started the course with the Emily Dickinson poem, "The Brain in Its Groove."
yeah.
And I guess I just wanted to explain why. I wanted to introduce to the students the post-structuralist idea of, it's actually not, it's old, but it's resurfaced with the popularity of post-structuralism, and that's the idea of tensions in practice. And I thought that Emily Dickinson was introducing the idea of tensions in practice for the writing of poetry, but also for the living of life. And I was wanting the students to think about it in the context of decision-making around activism. They were the students who made this course with me, who designed it with me, were students who had been involved in the previous year's sit-in on campus against racism. And I wanted them to be able to think about the tensions in our own practices. And I was looking at the splinter as the recognition that you can't add any new practice without cost.
Whoa. I am going to give Erica Kaufman a couple of seconds to think about a response. Look at Erica. Hi, Erica. You just heard what Barbara said. I'm going to, in a minute, turn to you and ask you just to respond, but I just want to buy you some time by thanking Barbara for that. That's really quite amazing. And while we're waiting, can we get the mic to Eric, who wants to tell us, say something brief about a kind of small world story having to do with Colgate?
Exactly. Professor Amelia Klein from Colgate is also our colleague here at Penn through a Tuck Fellowship. And
I know Amelia well.
So we are working with the Teacher Resource Center to help work with the Delaware Valley Romanticist doctoral cohort in giving them pedagogical training. But Amelia's idea is to take that back to Colgate next year. So I would love for you and Amelia to get together, and maybe I'll three-way with it, and we can talk about using ModPo and continuing the work that you began at Colgate, which Amelia can continue.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. And Barbara, we can help put you in touch directly with Eric. Erica Kaufman, any thoughts on this? So this is progressive education, I was going to say theory, but progressive education pedagogy in education, finding ModPo belatedly. This is something that's somewhat parallel to your own experience. What do you have to say?
Yeah, my sound admittedly cut out for a moment, but I was beyond excited to just hear the title of this course, Poetics of Educational Philosophy, because it just is what I spend a lot of my time thinking about. And the overlaps between what we think about when we think about progressivism and the history of education in America and the poets that we read in this class, I think that there's something, and Al knows that I've been sort of mulling this over for a while now. There's some sort of lurking connection between that particular kind of educational philosophy and the poets that we read, and it sounds like, Barbara, you're doing something really amazing.
So I want to thank Barbara and say goodbye to Barbara, but I also want to suggest that we invite Barbara to join us in the Teacher Resource Center, which is very close to what Eric was suggesting. Barbara, we'd like you to, if you don't mind writing to ModPo, is it just ModPo at writing? Yeah, modpo@writing.upenn.edu. We will put you in touch with Erica, and you can help us figure out what to do with the TRC. I just want.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, since we're running out of time, I want to just thank you for your call and hope that you'll hang out with us more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic. Bye. All right, bye. The last caller, and it's going to be a quick call, we'll get the Dickinson. But what I want us to do is we prep for that, 215-573-9752. there it is. Can you hold that person for a second? I just want us to go around and respond to 4 lines, actually 3 lines from Walt Whitman from Canto 5, just to say something about it. And I'll read the lines. It's the second stanza of Canto 5 of Song of Myself. And I'll read the lines, and I'll just invite a few of us to comment, okay? And we'll start with Dave Poplar. Loaf with me on the grass, loose the stop from your throat. Not words, not music or rhyme I want, not custom or lecture, not even the best. Only the lull I like, the hum of your valved voice. It's a great, great stanza. So, Dave, do you want to say something to start us off, and then I'll call randomly on a few people to add to it. What do you think?
Can I think about it for a minute?
Yes, you can.
Also,
Okay.
one quick thing. If Barbara's still listening, I wanted to ask if she'd be willing to share her syllabus for poetry of educational philosophy.
Great. When she emails us, we'll make sure
Yes,
that we
please.
get that passed around. Davey, what are your thoughts about this passage of Whitman? It's amazing, but how? Why?
For me, it's doing a lot of what Song of Myself is doing gesturally overall, which is trying to produce in the form of the poem a kind of like noise, a kind of like have the poem be what the sound that your body would produce
Right.
if your body were only producing sound without it being curated, without trying
Right.
to sing a song, without
Right.
trying to produce a lecture,
Right.
and to have a feeling and have a rhythm and a cadence as you read the poem that you're being asked, if you're reading the poem aloud,
Yes.
to speak in a cadence and to produce sounds that are closest to what's most basic to human expression.
What the body makes when it combines larynx and tongue and mouth.
Yeah.
It's a physical thing.
Yeah.
And it's very, very of great interest in the field of contemporary poetics now, obviously. But there was Walt talking about that. Something, I mean, I don't think he would use the word essence, but something elemental, right? That which is constituting the sound that we make prior to the making of words that became deemed poetic, prior to the music and rhyme, which is what we think of as, you know, modern in the sense of from the Renaissance on, and not custom or lecture, so not tradition or someone talking at you, talking head poet. So, you know, something lullish about it, yeah. Amber Rose, what are you thinking when you hear David say this or when you read Whitman say this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really beautiful stanza because if Whitman is saying this to his lover, right, and says, I don't even want the best. I don't even want the best of what you could possibly offer. Just the fact of you. Just come close and breathe with me is a beautiful kind of unbounded love. Like,
Yeah.
it's the kind of love, I don't need you to do a whole lot. I just love the fact
I just
of
want
you.
some tongue. No,
No,
please say-
Al, that's precisely not what he's
okay.
saying.
But the hum of your velvet voice. There's something.
Al.
Okay, start over. Sorry.
Well, even that, I mean,
I disagree.
well,
I,
the tongue.
I put it
if
in
it's
a
just a
colloquial
tongue
kind
at
of. It's
rest,
not sexual.
maybe.
I'm saying that what he wants from the person he loves is pre-linguistic. Is just the way we are when we use utterances.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, but you know, in the next stanza, he does talk about a tongue plunging to his heart. So
Yeah, he
that
does.
that tongue does come later.
Yeah, not later, Amber Rose. It
Well,
comes next.
immediately. It's right now. It's
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, you know, parting the shirt from my bosom bone and plunge your tongue. So, but that tongue
But
is
it's
informed by what you're saying, which is the tongue that's basically human, not just sexual, but the most elemental thing that we do with our bodies when we mean something, when we signify.
Can I go after this?
Yeah, please. And then we're going to get to the phone.
My point is related to this. I actually on rereading this time I ended up focusing a lot on the way in which the sexual partner, the person who is desired, is sort of on top of or the same as the reader, who is also on top of or the same as the writer,
Yes.
Whitman. Which I think this is a good spot for it. And another good spot is that I'm the teacher of athletes.
Right.
Canto. Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
Section.
that's fine. Song section.
So I've just been thinking about this a lot, and I think this is an interesting one where like you can imagine a scene of a person next to another person loafing on the grass together, but this is also an issue of you being in the scene of reading, you being the reader, and this is an issue of him writing. So he's talking about losing the stop from his own throat, but also from yours. That obviously has like a desire connotation to it. I think it's like somewhere between what both of you are saying, like. You're talking about a sort of, to use a word that I actually do mean positively, like a baseness to it. And I think you're talking about something like loftier, more abstracted. I think it's somewhere between, or maybe both, in the sense that there is a physicality to it and there is a pre-verbal thing. But there's also something really important about the intellect and the mind and the language being used. Yeah. So it's something about understanding in a pre-verbal and significantly post-verbal way.
Yeah, and I think at the very end of the course, when we begin to realize what Tracy Morris does when she enacts the voice and the body for the sake of big ideas that she's thinking, that performance becomes almost Whitmanian in the sense that it rejects custom lecture rhyme music, but it offers a new kind of music, the kind of music that is commonist, bass, etc., and also improvised, therefore not customary. Anyway, let's go to the last caller, who is going to get the Dickinson. We're going to take a quick question or comment, and then we're going to do final words, and then we'll wrap up. So, Anna, who is it?
So our final call, I think it's only fitting that we end with a repeat ModPo offender, our dear, dear friend, Joyce Pope.
Ah, Mama Pope. Hi, Joyce.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you all?
Good. When are you're going to travel to see us pretty soon?
Yes, in a couple of weeks I'll be there making meatballs.
Meatballs.
Yes.
Yes. What do we call that? It's Stein. There's a Stein connection. What is it?
Tender meatballs.
Tender meatballs. Yes. Tender meatballs. Yeah.
That's
good.
true. I wanted to just reiterate one point for all of the new ModPo users and send us some encouragement, because I wanted to relate to you what it meant to me when I was 17 and read a poem in high school versus when I read it in college. And until I started ModPo 5 years ago, the growth, even to try and love Emily Dickinson, is there now. Gertrude Stein, you still have a little bit way to go, but Emily has opened my mind so wide, and as I said before, the first year was my brain hurt all the time. But I just want to let everybody know, be encouraged, keep up the good work, and I'm sending my love to you all. And I will hang up now. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you so much. Joyce Pope from, I think near Sacramento, not Auburn, California, not that far from San Francisco. And she'll be here to make us meatballs and hang out. She'll be here for one of our webcasts. Okay, so let's get final words from everybody. One thing that you've wanted to add to this conversation, or something that you wanted to say. And I know, Dave, you passed twice, so I want to make sure you get an opportunity. And then I'll wrap up by actually summarizing a few of the introductions that have been made. There've been several thousand introductions, and most people take the course but don't introduce themselves, so this is a lot. There are 20,000 people enrolled in the course, and we have several thousand introductions, so that's pretty unusual for a massive open online course, and there's some great people out there. Okay, so let's go around. Erica, a final thought, final word, and it could also be a shout out, like come to my office hour or whatever. So Erica, you first.
I have two quick things. One is come to my office hour tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
Yep.
For all things Teacher Resource Center. And I also wanted to just mention there are two new videos that both feature students and colleagues of mine from the Masters of Arts in Teaching program here. And they are wonderfully brilliant on that question of interpreting a poem in the context of a 50-minute period.
They are great, and I just watched them recently, and they have now been linked to the ModPo Plus syllabus, plug for ModPo Plus, click Resources, and then click ModPo Plus Part 1. And they are contributing to Chapter 3, which is on the communist poets. One is on Genevieve Taggart, an unfortunately very not often read poet, and the other is on Ruth Lechlitner, who is a completely unread poet except for ModPo. Okay, thank you, Erica. Joe Massey from the Pioneer Valley, final thought?
Yeah, just two things. My office hour is this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And I also just wanted to say I loved the discussion of the splinter in the Dickinson poem. And I read the Whitman stanza as almost a corollary to that, loose the stop from your throat. Throat's not the brain, but I see that also as just kind of letting it go, releasing it, and the hum of your valve voice. That's just a beautiful phrase. So
Yeah, it is.
That's my comment.
Thank you, Joe, and we'll see you here next week. Looking forward to it.
Me too.
Dave Poplar, final thought?
I'd just like to add a quick thought about Canto 5. Again, reading Loaf with Me and Loose the Stop from Your Throat so I can hear the lull, I think is kind of amazing and reminds me of a poem. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. It's called Some Trees by the late John Ashbery.
He's being facetious. It's a major poem in the chorus, yeah.
And glad not to have invented some such comeliness, we are surrounded, a silence already filled with noises, a canvas on which emerges a chorus of smiles, a winter morning. It just seems to create the same feel and pinpoint the same importance of just the presence.
That's really well said. And after John's death not long ago, that silence, now that I've reread the poem many times because a lot of people post it to social media, that silence takes on an extraordinary thing that we haven't really thought about because John's been so chatty for so many decades, chatty in the poems and chatty in person, just one of the chatty people and just marvelous wit, really, and popular cultural reference maker, and all that stuff is silent now, sadly. Amaris Kachansky, final thought? Amaris she's got 2 hangouts, but they're both still. Amaris, are you there?
Yeah, I really apologize for my internet today.
That's all right.
Can you hear me?
You have a final thought? Yes, we can.
Yes. So I thought there was an interesting topic brought up in the forums, which I actually saw Molly responded to. Someone asked of our times, is it, Whitman's expansive free verse, or is it Emily's kind of brevity and maybe what some would call elitism? And I really like that a lot of people said it was kind of both, like we need both Whitman's democracy, Whitman's communing with everyone and valuing everyone's voices, and also Emily's taking a step back, her isolation to gain a new perspective. So I thought it was really cool to see that topic about both Whitman's active political engagement and Emily's kind of isolation but reflection.
Thank you, Amaris. And certainly Chapter 1 is not a competition between Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman, and Chapter 1.2, which is week 2, which is next week's work, is to look at latter-day Whitmanians and latter-day Dickinsonians, and after a while we can't tell the difference between them, which is it's a fun week. Molly, final thought. Thank you, by the way, for making the trip and hanging with us.
So fun to be here. I want to touch back on Canto 5, the only the lull I like, the hum of your velvet voice. I think there's a purposeful overwhelm, at least in this poem of Whitman's, that creates a hum in and of itself, and that seems to be his way of experiencing, is to just get lost in the hum and the rhythm without any specific words or music to it. And that feels a little bit like, to me, like the brain within its groove, that kind of flow state where you're just going with it.
And it really sets up the whole course. I mean, this course is about how we can explore signification, meaning making that doesn't require semantics. Like, you don't have to use a word that's meant or use a word that's part of like a customary lecture type thing. You can actually just make noises, and it has a signification. It's music, actually. Lily, final thought?
Yeah, this semester, one of the things I'll be doing in my not Writer's House time is co-teaching an English class, like English for Speakers of Other Languages class, and we're going to start doing poetry readings and creative writing in the class. So my office hours are, I believe, on Thursday at noon. And if you're an English learner or learned English as a later language, I would love if you would come to my office hours and just talk about the experience of reading poetry in English and what that's like for you, whether like positive or negative. It would be interesting for me and also just fun to talk about, helpful.
Thank you, Lil. Amber Rose, final thought?
Yeah, so my office hour is tomorrow, 10:45 to 11:45. It's my first year as a TA for ModPo, so if it's also your first year, we can come have like a first year office hour party.
Rookies
so come
rock.
hang out with me. Yeah, we do. I also just wanted to point to a line or two lines in the Whitman, actually in the first section. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. I think that's really beautiful, and I was thinking back to Davy's comment about scale, and to come down to the scale of a single blade of grass and to find rest there is really beautiful. There are so many things happening in my world, in this world, in everybody's world, so take that line and move with it throughout the rest of your week until you're with us again next week.
Oh, Amber Rose, you're like the host. You're like the DJ. We should stop right now. That was great. My goodness. Davey, Amber Rose is great.
Amber Rose is great.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a setup. What else could you say?
I could just talk about how great Amber Rose is.
Okay, that could be your final word.
Yeah. Some of the two very short additional final words in addition to Amber Rose is great, which is a real final word, is my office hours today at 3 Eastern, so in about an hour and 45 minutes. So if you want to continue the conversation, or if you had questions that we didn't get to, or our conversation made you think of something, come and chat with me. Additionally, I wanted to shout out a conversation that folks were having in the forums about Quakerism in Whitman, and whether there feels like, or there is a kind of Quaker spirit to some of Whitman's work. And it's produced a lot of really interesting and careful thoughts, and I thought it was lovely. And so if that sounds exciting to you, you should check it out.
That's really cool. Gabe, final thought?
Yeah, I've been changing my final thought a few times, but I guess I'll say as my final thought, if you happen to be a gay Coursera ModPo learner, Whitman is like a really amazing source of a lot of like gay writing in the future, as in not his own writing, but people who came after him who take his writing as a sort of ancestral writing, a lot like the legacies of like Oscar Wilde or another figure like that. So this is a really big genealogical figure for a lot of people. Ginsberg later we talk about.
Well, we actually talk about one of his poems next week, I think, right?
Yes.
The supermarket in California that's really about that.
So there's so much to dig into. So if you find that interesting, there's a lot there, and we can talk about it in my office hours, which are 2 to 3 on Tuesdays. And the last thing I was going to say is one of the things that I find entertaining to do while reading Whitman is like, you can either pretend or get a real glass of bourbon or something like that and sort of like wink and say a line. So like, I teach straying from me, yet who can stray from me? Da da da. Like,
whoa!
It's got a vibe. It's got a good vibe.
There's money in that commercial.
Thank you. Yeah, it's got a good vibe for it. I think it's the right.
Can you do the voice though? You got to do like.
I really can't do any voice for that.
Okay, I've got some kind of gravelly whiskey.
You can. You're a master.
I can, but I'm not going to. Too early for performances. Anna Strong, Safford, please, final thought.
Only thing I want to say is I just want to shout out to the incredible, amazing work of our esteemed, wonderful community TAs already. We're 4 days.
One of whom is here, Eric.
One of whom is here. Yay.
Yes. They're great. There's like 40 of them, and they're amazing.
I mean, so if you're new to ModPo and you're watching a webcast for the first time and you're in the forums for the first time, the community TAs are a group of amazing volunteers who've taken ModPo before, and they're just there to like help you, guide you, support you. They'll answer your questions immediately. They'll refer you to tech help if you need tech help. Like they're just like a amazingly generous, wonderful group of people. So look for them in the forums if you need some guidance. Of course, all of my fabulous TA buddies are up here as well, and
Thank you, Anna. I want to conclude with a quick final word, and then to identify some people in ModPo that we might not see a lot because they're going to be quiet and they're not going to come to Philly because they're far away. But I just want to say something about office hours. So we have a lot of office hours, and even if there's only 1 or 2 people coming to your office hour, it kind of puts the point out there that a massive open online course that is free and non-credit and open to the entire world need not be impersonal. There need not be anything impersonal about this experience. You can come and actually be in touch with us more or less in real time, and I hope you'll take us up on that. A shout out to Diego Clafia Estrada, who did ModPo last year, and loved especially, quote, discussing and interpreting North American poetry with both great expert academics and enthusiastic and diverse people whose different cultures and perspectives enrich the discussion in so many different and exciting ways. This, above all, is what I like about ModPo the most, the rich and culturally diverse community that gives it life, and Diego is contributing to that diversity and richness, and thank you. Cameron from Ottawa, who studied piano performance for years, and all that focus on music made her miss poetry, and so she's here to figure out the relationship between her interest in piano performance and poetry. Luisa Santa Maria, who is a librarian in Spain. Hello to Luisa. I saw your intro and really enjoyed it. Nancy Somerville, one of the pioneers in 2012, who made the very first copycat video, a close reading with some friends while drinking Scottish beer in Edinburgh. You may know that original video in the CCCR syllabus. And she's back now. Now she's retired, left Edinburgh. She's living on the island of Mull. I want to go there. I don't even know where it is, just the sound of that. The island of Mull. It's like a cousin to the island of Lull, where Whitman is hanging out, off the west coast of Scotland. Hello, Nancy. Congrats on your retirement. Glad you're back. Rashmi Singh of the Netherlands is a songwriter, and Rashmi is with us. Tiago Silva Castro Vieira, who's a law student in Brazil who's really busy with law school, but says that ModPo is an opportunity I can't miss and is going to be taking breaks from the intense legal study to hang out with us. Leela Devi from Malaysia, who is the principal of a preschool in a small town called Jitra in the north state of Kedah, has joined us and is going to be hanging out and trying to figure out from TRC and other places how to be a principal of a preschool in a rural place. Amy Sue Chase in Massachusetts loves ModPo, loves poetry, but has had no formal education in the humanities, 60 years old, 2 grown children and 1 young still at home. Quote, this online format is an exciting way for me to learn in the pockets of free time that I find, being a mom and being not formally trained in poetry. Hello, Amy Sue. And finally, Rocio Natasha, who's in Puerto Rico, who's recovering from the hurricane. Yoga instructor, a tour guide, and a puppeteer. Did ModPo in 2014, took lots of notes, and now is back to finish the course. And she writes somehow on a device, right now I have no electricity due to Hurricane Irma. It's been almost a week. I've been charging my phone in my car, following ModPo from the phone that she's charged in her car, is writing this by candlelight, is loading each page with excruciatingly slow cellular data just to give you an idea of how much I want to be here. And Rocio, we want you to be here. That's quite inspiring to those of us who just have to walk down the street on dry land to come and do our thing. Thank you to Laura, who came down from Bucks County, to Eric, of course, as always, Barbara, who called from Ithaca, Cindy, who called from Ottawa, and Mama Pope, who joined from California and is going to be joining us again later. Anna, Molly, great to see you. Lily, Amber Rose. This is just like too much fun. Hanging out with you. You know that, right? This is really, really good, Davey. Thank you so much. And Gabe, and Amaris, and Dave, and Joe, we'll see you next week. And Erica, we're signing, and thanks to Zach and Chris, we're signing off. We hope that you'll write an essay. I'll be writing to the whole group about the essay on Dickinson for next week. We'll be here on Wednesday. Who remembers the time of day next Wednesday? 10 a.m. So we're here 10 a.m. Eastern Time, which is going to help the people on the other side of the world a little bit. Because Eleanor Smagorinsky, it's 2 a.m. where she is, so she's sleeping, but next time it'll only be midnight. So why not? So we'll see you all soon. Thanks for doing ModPo. We really appreciate it.